Well, I'm excited to be here today with the legendary Danielle Laura. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
So, I just spent, I don't know, 2 hours binge listening to your podcast, Hot Takes. And it's called Hot Takes, right? Am I getting this right?
Hot talks. Yeah, very
Hot
close.
Talks, excuse
Yeah.
me. To your podcast, Hot Talks. And if you're not listening to it yet, I highly recommend it. I was like, I could not stop listening because Danielle's words, everything that comes out of her mouth is just like a brilliant little gem that you're going to be journaling and taking tons of notes. So I'm very excited to have Danielle on the show today because we're in a business group together. She was our pod leader in that business group. And she just has such a grounded energy. And we were talking about the idea of self loyalty versus self abandonment. So we're going to dive deep into that topic today. Danielle, do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey? Because you have such an interesting background.
Sure. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you so much for your warm welcome and your beautiful compliment about my podcast. Yours is also amazing and why I'm thrilled to be here. So, yeah, a little about my background. So, I have a background in Western medicine, actually, thinking that I was going to just work my way up the healthcare corporate ladder, which I did. I started out in nursing, then clinical therapy, and then a medical executive, really thinking I was going to change the world and
Of
healthcare.
course.
And, became quickly disillusioned because of all the red tape. And,
Mm,
I was also in my early 20s and thought I could do anything, which is great. Like we love that part of ourselves, right?
we do.
And also, right, very quickly became disillusioned. But mostly the biggest thing really is I was living in self abandonment and self betrayal really
Mm,
my whole life, doing whatever I thought my parents wanted or the world wanted or
mm,
at the time my spouse or really anyone. I just was like, okay, I will follow whatever I need to do in order to have the success and fulfillment that everyone says I should be having. So let me just follow whatever they want of me. And finally got, after so much burnout and depletion and just disillusionment,
mm.
finally started asking myself for the first time ever, do I even want to be doing this? Is this actually my
Great
calling?
question.
Yeah, great question, right? Why am I doing this? And is there something more? Because I always knew I wanted to make a difference in the world since I was a little
Mm,
girl. I knew I wanted to help the world heal, but I didn't know what that was going to look like. I just kind of went through Western medicine,
mm,
followed my mom's footsteps in that realm. And so I finally started asking myself the questions that I had never asked before and coming up against these walls of my own limitations and how much my life was programmed to live for everyone else. And when I finally got really clear, I call it my spiritual awakening of sorts, right? Because
right.
I grew up in a very religious background, but this was the first time I was asking the big questions outside even of religion, right? And really asking, like,
Mm.
okay, God, which I believe in God. God, what do you want of me? What do you want from me? Like, what is my actual purpose, right? So I started literally Googling everything, right? I'm like Googling everything related to purpose, like, what do I do in the world? Soul, death, right? All these things. And
Soul death. Is that what you said? Soul death?
I did because it was crazy. I had the stable job, the great career, the house, the marriage, the cars, all the things, right? But I felt like my soul was dying inside,
Mm.
right? It was one of those things where even on the weekend, like on Saturday would come and I couldn't even be excited for the weekend because I was like, oh no, I have to go back to this in 2 days, right?
Right. Oh,
And
geez.
so, that's like, to me, that was soul death. So anyway, I'm like, cure for soul death, Googling whatever I can. And for some reason, I ended up stumbling upon blog after video around human design and gene keys.
Mm.
And this was over 10 years ago. So this was not even talked about on social media. It was not the fad that it is today at all.
You were
Nobody was talking.
early on.
Yes.
Early. An
Yes.
early girly. I love it.
I was. And I just started learning. I feel like I had like a master's degree level of knowledge in
Mm.
like 2 months because it was all I was doing. I was like eat, breathing, and sleeping, consuming all of this stuff. And it was finally the first time that like things made sense, that the
Mhm.
energetics. And that's what I had been missing really all of my life, right? Because it was like I studied the physical side of things, I studied the mental side of things, the spiritual side of things. But the missing link was for me was the energetics piece. And so when I started living my design and started applying things to my own life, everything was radically transforming. And I really finally was able to answer those questions of what is my gifting and who am I and what am I here to do in the world and how do I want to do that and what's possible for me. So basically went through this whole awakening where I ended up leaving my corporate career, starting my business, got divorced, moved across the country,
Oh,
all
wow.
the things
All of
that
it.
fast forward almost 8 years later. And I've had just the huge blessing of working with incredible, what I call just conscious
Mhm.
entrepreneurs and leaders of the world who really believe they too want to use their God-given gifting to help the world and make this world a better place. And it's been a beautiful journey ever since.
Well, I love all of this, everything about it. I also love that you were an early adopter of human design because I didn't even hear about it. I feel like I was early hearing about it in 2018. I was like, what is
Mhm.
this human design thing? Because I was really into astrology and I would get
Yeah,
my chart read every single year for my birthday and with my forecast for the year. And there were even years when I would go a certain place to be in that place to start my birthday so that
I love it.
the year would, I don't know, the energy around the year would line up in a certain way. Maybe I should get back to that. I don't know.
It's
But
powerful.
I'm fascinated that you were so early on human design because I don't even feel like there was that much information about it.
There really wasn't. There really wasn't. But what was there, I was consuming like it was
Yes.
my job, right? And happily, because it was literally transforming my life in a huge way.
What's your type?
I am a 3-5 emotional authority projector.
Oh, wow. 3-5. Oh, my partner's a 3-5. That's it. 3-5s that's a hard path.
It
Not an
is.
easy one.
It sure is. Yeah, we have to trial and error our way through life. Yeah, that's so fun.
So fun.
Yeah.
I'm a 6-3 generator, so I do have the 3 line, which is the trial and error. It's an emotional generator. It's a lot, but it's worth it. It's a lot.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get it.
So we were you said something on one of your podcasts and we were having a conversation, I think it was yesterday about, or maybe was it last week or yesterday? I can't remember. Every day. It's not yesterday. It was last week. Sorry. Everything's blending into each other about self-loyalty and self-abandonment. But you said
Mhm.
something on one of the episodes that I was listening to yesterday about a lot of the people that are drawn on this spiritual path or feeling like this pull to step into being, I don't know, stepping into like being iconic maybe is like the way that I would describe it, or they have like this
Mhm.
really deep sense of purpose and they're here to either lead movements or make a big impact on the world. They
Yeah.
kind of started out feeling like they were weirdos and
Mhm.
didn't really belong. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Definitely. And, they're usually what I consider to be also creative geniuses
Mhm.
who can see the things, hear the feel the things, know the things, see the bigger picture. They're really visionaries. And the world really isn't made for visionaries in a way, right? And so oftentimes we haven't really fit in with other groups
Right.
or felt seen, right? Now we can maybe fit in if we compromise ourselves, right? And we start living in self-betrayal and just do whatever to fit in, but very much kind of go through life feeling like maybe people don't really fully see us for who we really
Mhm.
are, or they don't really
I
get
feel
the
that.
vision. They don't really understand where we're headed. And the cost of that is, we start holding everything on our shoulders and being the
Mhm.
one everyone else counts on without feeling like we always have that same support. And this is, why the beauty of self mastery is so important, because when we can understand who we are and create that space for ourselves, regardless of who sees it or gets it or not, and then we can band together with the other people like us, that's when real liberation gets to happen.
This is so true. When you were saying that, like I've always had this dream of creating a signature talk called What Makes You Weird Makes You Wonderful.
Oh, I
I
love
want to
it.
write a children's book about this. No, don't steal my idea, anyone who's listening. But it's I felt like that. And I think a lot of people do, a lot of these. And I wouldn't necessarily call myself a rebel because there's part of me that was a big people pleaser, like trying to make everyone around me happy.
Mhm.
But also like I didn't feel like I fit in at all. And I didn't really understand it until later. I'm like, I never saw myself getting a job, even though I worked in jobs. It was like, what am I going to do to start a business? Or like, how am I going to make an impact? Like, what is the thing that I'm going to be known for? It's a different kind of wiring. And I think it takes a different level of energy management. How do you work with people, or how would you recommend that people identify when their energy is off? Because this is the thing, right? And then what are some of the tools that you give them to get back on track?
Yeah. The thing about, I'll say us, right? Because I identify
Yes.
as this too, right? Is we have an unconventional energy, meaning the things that work for most people and A plus B equals C equations, we are very non-linear in how things work for us
Mhm.
and how we see things and feel things and relate to things. So this is why I love human design and gene keys and astrology, all three of them to go hand in hand really
Mhm.
beautifully together, because it shows anybody tailored custom to them and
Mhm.
every little nuance of your life, how you can thrive. And so when we know how to look at our chart beyond just like our type and a couple of our channels,
Yes.
right? But we're able to look into the nuance of who we are,
Mhm.
life actually becomes so easy because it's this big permission slip of, oh,
Right.
here's how I was designed to thrive. So let me just follow the path of least resistance so that I can do, be, and have what is actually meant for me in this world, right? So those are the three main systems that I love using when I'm working with my clients. And then of course my gifting as a seer as well, and clairvoyant, and calling in the things that we can't see, or maybe the things that human design or gene keys doesn't quite explain, but those ineffable knowings that are there that we just get to prophetically bring to life.
How did you start sharpening that skill set? Because it sounds like you came from traditional medicine, so you have a science
Mhm.
brain.
Yep.
How
Yep.
did that meld in? I know that you had this kind of spiritual awakening, but were you scared when you started seeing things or feeling things, or I don't know how you intuit?
Yeah, so I've had this really my entire life, like as
Okay.
little as I can remember, like 2 years old, I think was like my first like channeling, right, or seeing
Oh,
spirits,
great.
or think people who have crossed over things like this. But because I did grow up in a very Christian background, this
Mhm.
was not accepted. This was very like quote of the devil, right? Anything that was
Right.
not like of
Mhm.
Jesus. And granted, literally spiritual gifts are talked about in the Bible, but
Yeah.
the way that I grew up, this was bad and wrong, and this is not something that you talk about. So I just suppressed it. But it plagued me for most of my life because I
Wow.
was knowing all the things or seeing the things, feeling the things, but I couldn't talk about it because people thought I was crazy. Right. And so I just thought something's wrong with me, right? Because I was on this emotional roller coaster all the time. Pair that with being a projector with an emotional
Yes.
authority.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was a freaking
A lot.
nightmare, right? Like it was,
A lot. You're waiting to
yes.
be invited in, and then you have all these feelings, and
Oh
then
my
people
gosh.
are inviting like, the spirits are inviting you in. You're like, "What am I supposed to do?"
Yes, yes. And so this was even more heightened when I worked in healthcare because I was
Mm.
also
Yes.
feeling and taking on sickness in my own body somatically.
Wow.
So there were times where I'm like, am I crazy? Like, am I a hypochondriac? Because I would literally be experiencing symptoms that my patients were having.
Wow.
I worked with in oncology. So I then, was thinking that I had cancer because I had literal symptoms, right? But then I would
Wow.
go get tested and everything come back normal. And I'm like, oh my God, I must be insane. Like, what is happening? And that's when I really was like, okay, no, I have to figure this out because I know I'm not crazy. This is very
Mhm.
real. So what is going on here? And can I just like own it? Can I just accept this? And I ended up working with a shaman, and we just opened everything up and realized, you know what, these are my God-given gifts.
Yeah.
And how beautiful would it be if I actually embraced them instead of allowing them to plague my life, right? So long story short, essentially, I had this all my life. And when I finally accepted it and started talking about it, even in my business and things like this, in the very beginning of my business, I kind of had a real life crucifixion. Essentially, I got kicked out of my church, ended up
Oh
getting
gosh.
divorced. All of my family and friends who I had been doing life with disowned me, essentially thinking that I sold my soul to the devil and I was
Oh
quote doing the
gosh. I'm
devil's
so
work and all
sorry.
these things. So no, I'm so grateful for it, Tracy, because it made me unshakable. When we talk about living in self-betrayal your entire
Mhm.
life, and then you get slain and accused of all of these things that are so untrue, especially when it takes your character, it is a full-blown activation into self-loyalty.
Right.
And so I can look back and see themes of how this played out in my life. But I'm so grateful because now to this day, out of all of these micro moment shifts where I had to choose self loyalty, now it's become my new normal, right? Whereas before, my
Mm.
default was always self abandonment.
So let's talk about what self-abandonment might manifest as, or you might see the signs of in the real world versus what self-loyalty looks like, because I think it's an interesting distinction. And sometimes, recovering people pleasers like me over here have a tendency to do a lot of things for other people instead of being loyal to what they know to be true for themselves. When you were going through this process, I want to kind of go back here. When you're going through this process of being basically cast out from your community, which must have been awful at the time, how did you ground and trust that you were on the right path?
Yeah, that really just came to this kind of ineffable knowing that I knew there was so much more on the other side. It was just this blind faith, but it was that conviction. And I always say, like, we know we're on the right path when even when things don't make sense, even when everything is going wrong, we keep doing it, even when we have no evidence. And in fact, when we have
Right.
all the evidence that we shouldn't do this, but we know in the depths of our soul, there's just something that's just flickering and holding on. That's really what it was for me. I can't even say that I did XYZ. I did all these amazing things. I didn't. I just had so much faith because I knew that I knew that I knew in the depths of my soul, there is going to be so much beauty on the other side of this. And that's what I clung to. And I believed that. And I kept making that my focus, not everything that I was losing, not everything that was going wrong, but I just shifted my energy and my focus to everything that was going right. And the tiniest little things, even when it felt like nothing was going right, I would celebrate every little thing. I would celebrate as though it was
Great
like the
practice.
biggest thing in the world. And that, I feel, allowed me to stay in that frequency of self-loyalty and build that muscle, really, the courage muscle, to be true, right? Very, very true to
Right.
myself. But to answer, your other question, right? What are some signs maybe that this would be happening for someone? I think a big thing is when you're putting everybody else before you. That's really one of the biggest things in everything, right? Whether it's as simple as, where does your partner want to go for dinner that night, and you never ever go where you want, you always go where they want, right? Seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of life, but it's a sign. And how often are you doing that? Right? Are you the one in your friend group that every single person comes to? You are the midnight call, you are the emergency contact, but yet no one can be there for you, and or you're afraid to ask for that same reciprocal energy. Right? Is it that you're going above and beyond in your business or your job? Are you over delivering to your clients to the point of depletion? Or if you work, in a corporate setting, are you doing all the things over and over and over to like look like the best person ever, but you're not getting paid a penny more for it, and then you're burning yourself out? There's so many ways that this can come about, but those are the most common that I see in pretty much everyone at some point or another.
So when I think of this, just the way that you've spoken about it, with creative business owners, founders, entrepreneurs, this might look like for some people too, having people on your team that might not be holding their weight, and you're doing all this extra work to keep things afloat, or not having that conversation that you need to have with someone. I was just talking with someone before this who just had to fire her marketing manager, and she's like, it was really hard, but I knew I had to do it because she didn't want to do the job that she was hired for, and she just wanted to do strategy. And that's great that she just wanted to do strategy, but that's not the job that she was hired for. So when a business owner might be stuck in a season like that, what kind of advice would you give them to be self-loyal, but also to be leading their team?
First and foremost is asking yourself, what is the cost of this long term? Right? Because I believe with all of my heart, the best math that we can calculate is the future cost of this current decision. So when you are keeping the person on your team that you like, and maybe is like a total sweetheart, but they're not doing their job, right? Or they want to do something else, which is not even what they were hired for, right? For the example that you just gave, then what is going to be the cost of that long term? Is that going to mean like your entire marketing campaign is going to be like squash, and you're going to waste all your ad spend, and then you're going to be like 6 months down the road in the hole with X, Y, and Z thing, right? And then this person has to leave, and you have to retrain someone else. And then before you know it, one entire year has gone by and nothing has been moved forward, right? We got to think about this realistically versus the temporary pain or agony of hurting their feelings by releasing them, right? Or what does that mean? What are you making that mean about yourself, right? Are you making that mean you're this like horrible, bad boss or person? Or are you saying, wow, what a sovereign leader I am, that I can be so attuned to what I and this company needs, that anything that does not align with that, I allow to go with grace.
That alignment question, that alignment process or energy, I think is just one of those things that when you get back to yourself and knowing what it is that you actually want and what you're creating is so powerful when you're clear. And I think that there's something, for me at least, setting very strong boundaries. The boundaries for me, I think, are more with the boundaries with yourself, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And not crossing that line. Because I think a lot of times when the self-abandonment comes up, we're like, oh, well, I'll just do this time. Or, oh, well, this needs to get done, instead of actually doing the hard thing and taking it that next step, whether it's to have a conversation with someone or do the hard thing that you're putting off because it feels hard. But actually, when you do it, it's so liberating.
Right. And think about too, like if you're honest right now, you're listening to this, really ask yourself, how many times are you really making negotiations? Is it just every now and then, or is it actually your default mechanism? Because it probably
That's a great
is.
question.
Yeah. Right. We justify in our minds like, oh, just this once. But how many times have you said that?
So someone who's listening to this and they're feeling like super off track with this, or like, I am self-abandoning all the time.
Yeah.
How do you get to a spot where you're really admitting that to yourself? Because it's a hard thing. It's very, for me, it's really emotional too, because there's a lot of frustration tied in it. Well, I think my response, what do they call this in human design? My response?
You're not frustration or your strategy?
Maybe, yeah, my strategy is frustration. Okay. Is that what it is?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. That's mine, frustration. So I feel very frustrated when something's out of alignment or I'm self-abandoning. So when you're working with someone who's kind of off track, how do we get them back?
Yeah, well, first we have to notice what is that core emotion that is overtaking you, right? In your situation, what yours is probably frustration, right? Being a generator. For projectors, it's bitterness, right? There's anger for manifestors. So what is the core theme that you are experiencing over and over and over that, if you're honest with yourself, is really actually become your default emotion? And how much longer do you want that to be sabotaging your entire world and your business? It's not just business related. This is spilling over into your relationships, into your parenting if you have kids. This is affecting every area of your life. So we first have to get clear on that. And then we'll also look at what is your signature theme, right? And so for some people, that's success. Some people, that's joy, happiness, bliss. And what do we actually want to feel? Then what is the one micro shift that we can do right now? Because I think people, oftentimes what I've seen is people think this has to be this whole life overhaul. And now they've got to do all of these things and make all these shifts and cut out this and this and this. It's like, we can just actually start with one thing that will lighten the load and allow you to be self-loyal. Just one thing right now. And today that could be maybe you shut your computer at 5 p.m. and you literally don't answer any more emails. You don't do anything else, right? You just go have fun with your family, right? Tomorrow, maybe it's going to be having the conversation with the team member. The next day, it could be something else. It doesn't have to be everything at once, but I find the path of least resistance into making self-loyalty your new normal is in the micro shifts of your day to day, where you could go into default and self-abandon, or in that moment, you have the courage to choose differently. And it gets to be that simple.
That is such a simple and powerful practice.
Yeah.
I want to bring this back to something you mentioned earlier, though. You were talking about relationships. And I think sometimes it's underplayed how when you are not being loyal to yourself, how much that affects your relationships. Because there was a period a couple of years ago where I knew that I was ready to expand beyond what I was doing. And the pain, and I will tell you, like, it was painful, of the self-abandonment that I was putting myself through, not honoring what it was that I wanted to do, people pleasing and continuing to do something in a certain way. With my company, Flourish and Thrive Academy, almost destroyed my relationship with my partner that I had spent years calling in and manifesting. And that was literally the wake-up call that I needed to actually get back to myself. I knew that if I didn't change something with how I was showing up, I would lose this person for good. And it's not just that when you're self-abandoning, like in your career or maybe in some relationships or whatever in your life, it might actually, the things that might be at stake are the very things that matter to you most. And I think that's why it's so important to put yourself first.
Yeah. And that is exactly as you described, like the loss, the wake up call for you potentially was losing this person you had so intentionally called
Yes.
in. And that's what I like to call like a catalyst moment, right? And usually the catalyst moments actually have nothing to do with our business. They're
Yeah, I
actually
know.
relationally driven. It's usually we're losing someone or some sort of relationship that is the most important in our life as a result of us continually choosing to abandon what matters most. And so even, as you're listening, even think about in this moment, what what is a catalyst that keeps happening? Or what could be the
Mm.
catalyst that happens if I don't choose to honor myself?
Can you give us some examples of like maybe of what you've seen in your clients?
Yeah. So, similar to you, some sort of relationship begins to fail. Someone kind of has to give an ultimatum, right?
Hmm.
Or a child, their kid will be like, you don't even care about us. Like, you don't even love us.
Oh,
You're always
wow.
working, right? Like, oh my God,
That's a big
dagger to
one.
the heart as a mom, right?
Hmm.
Or even, you're missing family functions or you're missing a big deal. Maybe it was your dad's 75th birthday and you
Oh,
didn't
wow.
even go. You couldn't go because you're so busy, right? Or whatever the case is, or even situations where you're not honoring even to your team or to what maybe you have a launch coming up, right? And you said you
Yeah.
were going to do all of these X, Y, and Z things. And now your whole team can't even execute on what they need to execute on, right? There's so many things. I would say these are the most common, right off the top of my head, the most common things that I've seen.
All of that lands actually. I mean, I don't usually miss big family events or anything like that, but I can't say that there haven't been times in my life when any of those have been true, when I was like on this precipice of like getting back into alignment with my next level, reinventing myself or my business or whatever it might be. I have a question for you about trusting being loyal to yourself when you're in that process. I think you called it's been called like the messy middle, the magic dark, that you called it something on the one of the podcasts I was listening to yesterday.
Yeah, the
That
self-abandonment.
moment when you're like on the path and you're trusting yourself, you're being loyal to yourself, but nothing's happening and you're like, did I just make a mistake? And you're second guessing yourself.
Yeah. That's a really tough moment. But what we do is in those moments, again, it's the micro moment shifts where we
Mhm.
choose to do one thing differently. And I always encourage people to practice this with things that are so insignificant they don't matter. Things like, you made your bed that day because you said you were going
Right.
to make your bed, right? In the grand scheme of life, this literally is irrelevant, but it's a micro moment shift that you kept a commitment to yourself. You said you were going to do it, you did it. Maybe then we go a little bit deeper, and maybe it's you have to have a tough conversation with someone, or even just a vulnerable, maybe
Mhm.
it's a happy conversation,
Yeah.
but it's a vulnerable one that it might make you feel anxious, right? But you do it, you have the conversation, you trusted yourself, and then it works beautifully.
Mhm.
So it's these micro moment shifts where you do the thing you said you were going to do, whether it's with yourself, whether it's with someone else, and you build that muscle of faith and trust that I do what I say I'm going to do, and I make the decision that is in alignment. And from there, it begins to be your new, not your new normal operating system, because you see the reward from it. So once
Right.
you start seeing the reward and the beauty and the bliss, both internally as well as external shifts, there's no way you're going to go back into self abandonment. Like you're like, oh no, I've tasted this goodness of liberation and freedom. I'm not going back there. Right. But it's not an overnight process. It doesn't happen just
Mhm.
once. We have to decondition all of the years in which we negotiated with our truth.
Right. One of the things I've been playing around with lately is every single day creating some sort of journal prompt or something for myself that helps me step into the future version of me and paints the picture of what that looks like. And so that has been really helpful for me. It sounds so silly sometimes, but when you're in a deep transition or you're really trying to step into your next level and the evidence isn't there yet, you need to like continue to motivate yourself. At least
Yeah.
I do. I don't know. My motivation is just trusting that this thing I want is there. I think back, I've been an entrepreneur for so long. And when I was launching my first business in the 90s and really painting the picture of what I wanted, I had this vision of being in all these, because I sold jewelry or I made my
Mhm.
own jewelry, and being in all these stores and having all the press and the celebrity clients. And the timeline, which is interesting to me, maybe wasn't as fast as I thought it was going to be. But then at a certain point, I'm looking back and my jewelry was sold in like 350 stores. And I had all the celebrity clients and the press and all of those things. You talk a little bit about timeline shifts. How do we speed the timeline shifts up so we're jumping timelines a little faster? And do you want to talk a
Yes,
little bit about what it means to jump timelines? Because time's really a construct, right? It's not real.
exactly. Totally. And I say timeline jumping really comes down to how quickly do you want to live your life with no speed limit? Right.
Mm,
So it's really all about what can your nervous system handle right now? And there are seasons where it can't handle much. Capacity is
right.
low, right? And so
Mhm.
there are seasons where I call them, sometimes we have maintenance seasons where we're just maintaining what's already been done. And then we have evolution seasons where we are doing a new thing, launching this, bringing this to the world. But it's rare that we're always in an evolution season. We also need maintenance seasons, right? And so, depending on what kind of season you're in, depending on your capacity, both emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, that can really dictate your speed limit, right? Or if you even
Mhm.
want to have a speed limit. So, if you're in an evolution phase, you might realize you're quantum shifting left, right, and sideways, right?
Right.
Because you have capacity for that. And then there are seasons of maintenance where things can actually be blissful and beautiful. But if you're the high achiever, you're going to think something is potentially wrong, or you're not doing enough, or am I being lazy, right? But the
Mhm.
most beautiful thing is if we can just recognize, what kind of season am I in right now? Am I in a maintenance season where I'm really tending to my capacity? Or am I in an evolution season that I want and am ready for and have capacity to quantum leap without burning out?
Right.
Then you get to choose that. So it's really a matter of getting honest with, what do you have capacity for right now, realistically? And
Mhm.
then let's go with that speed limit.
Speed limit. I love that. Now, what are some of your favorite nervous system regulation practices?
For me personally, I love anything that has to do with water. I have a lot of water in my chart.
Oh.
So going to the beach, boating, just putting my feet in water, going and
Mm.
staring at a lake, like literally something as simple as that, and being in nature.
Water's so
Um,
cleansing too.
Yes, I also love meditation, guided meditations that allow me to, like, go somewhere, whether that's, attuning to peace
Yeah.
or envisioning something XYZ, because otherwise my mind will just go crazy.
Mhm.
Something that will kind of guide me back into whatever the end result is that I desire. Sometimes it's just being around family is really nervous system regulating, or just regulating depending on the day, right? But being around people that you love, right, that you trust, that see you and pour into you. But also things like, you can do EFT tapping, you can go
Mm.
dancing, you can work out, right? Anything, I say anything that allows you. Sometimes we have these fancy words like nervous system regulation, right? But at the end
Right.
of the day, what allows you to just come back into your body, right? And just center yourself. And whatever that is for you, do that.
You know what I love about your response is it was very different than I thought it was going to be. Because I feel like
Right.
everyone's like, do breath work and then like reprogram
Uh-huh.
your subconscious mind. And all of that is great because I do all of that. But there is something to be said about moving your body and just also being in nature is huge. It's a challenge here in Arizona because it is very hot. It's hard to be outside in the summer, but
Yeah.
it's also dry. And I feel like when I think of nature, I think of grass or the beach. So
Mhm.
Jason and I just got back from Hawaii and I was like, can we just go back there? That's where I feel completely relaxed and like in flow.
Yes.
Anyway, I love that response because there is something I don't think it's underrated because I've been very drawn to fitness and moving my body because I want to look good. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I do. But on the other side of that, it's just you feel so much better after you work out or after you go do a yoga class or after you take a walk or after you do and dance like you were saying and the better you feel, the more regulated you are, the easier it is to sleep, the easier it is to be in a good mood, and that energy, that energetic alignment is the thing that raises your vibration to match what you want.
Yes, yes. And things like breath work and even
Mhm.
ice baths and whatever, these are powerful things. Subconscious reprogramming, yes, I'm all about it. And what I find is a lot of times those that is a performative energy. We are still having to
Right.
be active to do that, which sometimes counteracts regulating the nervous system. So that's why I led with really simple things, right? Like just sometimes being in nature, being around your best friend, hanging out with your pups, right? Going and eating a piece
Yeah.
of
Oh, my
chocolate.
dog is the best.
Sometimes those things where you don't have to be anything other than just you, right? You don't have to perform. You don't have to do all of this deep inner work. You just calm down, right? Sometimes I found,
Mhm.
especially for us visionary, high creative people,
Yes.
sometimes that is actually the most regulating over anything else.
One of the things, this is a random addition that I'm going to share with you, but one of the things that just popped in my head, and I'm really starting to trust that when things pop into my head, I have to follow it,
Yeah.
is turning on some like a little bit frenetic music and just shaking your body like a dog
Yes.
does. I hate to
Yeah.
say this. One of my friends said this to me once. We were in the process. She's like, "Isn't it interesting how when dogs are stressed or they're wanting to brush something off, they can't help it, but they just start shaking and they
Yeah.
shake out the feeling and then they're fine. They go back to sleep, whatever it is." Like humans can do that too, and it actually does feel really good after.
It
It's like you
does.
shake that frenetic energy out.
Yes, I love it. I love it too when it has like a solid beat to it, almost like a
Mhm.
shamanic drumming to it or something too,
Yes.
because you feel it like vibrating in your chest and it's like a
Yeah.
full body
So
release.
good.
Yeah.
So good. Danielle, thank you so much for coming in here and talking about self-loyalty and self-abandonment. Where can everyone find you and how can they work with you?
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Tracy. I've loved every minute of this conversation. I am everywhere on social media. You can find me at underscore Danielle Laura underscore. You can pop on to my website at danielle-laura.com. And I have various ways that you can work with me, from intro courses to group programs, masterminds, one-to-one retreats, VIP days, pretty much anything you can think of. I have probably an entryway for it in some capacity.
She does it all. And definitely listen to her podcast, Hot Talks. Not hot wait, hot talks, not hot takes. But
Yeah.
you'll probably find it anyway. It's great, super bingeable, easy to listen episodes, and you're going to want your journal because she's giving you homework every single time.
Thanks so much, Tracy. I appreciate you.